On the program today, Egypt's inflation falls to 4.2% in July from 5.6%. World Bank approves $150 million to improve living conditions for residents in urban informal settlements in Kenya. Plus, the Republic Bank of Ghana advocates for green bonds for buildings and mortgage financing. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am BC Adebayo. Let's begin the show with the markets. And major markets in Africa began the week in the negative territory, with South Africa's JSE down the most by 1.56%. The NSE in Nigeria retreated from its bullish run at intraday and was down marginally by 0.02%. Egypt's EGX 30 was also down marginally by 0.09%. Kenya closed positive on Friday. But it's a different picture in the Middle East, where major markets were mostly positive, except for the market in Saudi Arabia, which was down 0.04%. The Qatari index rose the most at intraday by 0.35%. And in the UAE, both indexes in Abu Dhabi and Dubai were up marginally by 0.01%. In a similar vein, European stocks advanced this morning, brushing up tensions between the U.S. and China that have dampened investor sentiment in Asia. Let's talk to Conrad Busin for updates from the European scene. Good afternoon, Conrad. It's good to see you again. So testing for the coronavirus is now compulsory in Germany for travelers who arrive from countries deemed to be high risk. How does the testing work? Is immigration at the airports going to be so chaotic?
Well, BC, I have to say it's a bit of a cliche, but things at the airports where the new testing centers have been installed are pretty organized the German way. Everything is quite orderly and calm. I went to report for our station Deutsche Welle from the Frankfurt airport this weekend, since those compulsory tests have been put in place. And I have to say, I saw nobody freaking out. And of course, occasionally people had to wait in line for a while, but not very long. When you arrive or when you sit on that plane, from another country to Germany, you have to fill out a passenger locator card. That's a card that after your landing will be collected. It's a database for the health authorities here in Germany to know who should be tested or maybe who would still have to go into quarantine. And in order to be able to do that, the information gets to the health authorities via this passenger locator card. After you landed, you're being guided to one of the testing centers where the testing happens quite quickly, and it's actually free. You don't have to pay for it. You get the results within 24 hours at the latest. On Saturday, when I was there, the people doing the tests said that you would even get it much earlier.
All right, so the stock exchange in Beirut is opening for the first time since the catastrophic explosion last week. Is this a good idea? And how is the situation in Lebanon impacting financial markets in Western Europe?
We see it already has impacted the markets in Western Europe for quite a while now. In recent weeks and months, many citizens from Lebanon, corporations, have been trying desperately to get money out of the country. And of course, Western European banks and bourses, European assets are considered safe havens by them. I can tell you also that this is nothing that people here would particularly be happy about, because, of course, it indicates how much the situation in Lebanon has been deteriorating for quite a while. Many people here in Germany, financial people, but of course politicians, are looking nervously at what's going on in Lebanon. They're asking if we might be facing new refugee waves. What happens if Lebanon really fails as a state? And in this environment, the news that the markets are opening in Beirut again, the stock exchange there, is positive, even if it sounds a bit strange. But it really is an effort by the people there to keep things functioning and going.
All right, last week, Conrad, we saw that strong export and industrial production numbers from Germany, as well as a strong increase in factory orders, gave the German stock market a push. How has trading started this morning? What's the mood like?
Well, look at this. Look at a very shaky DAX, a very shaky German stock index this Monday. We have, on the one hand, Donald Trump and his temporary relief or temporary aid for American households, which is supporting sentiment somewhat. We have also, on the other hand, bleaker, more cloudy outlook on the economy here in Europe. In Germany, the unions are demanding an extension of those furlough schemes for workers. The government in Berlin at the same time is thinking about extending insolvency exception rules for companies which have been put into place due to Corona. All this indicates that we have to get prepared for longer exceptional measures for the economy, which might help the economy, but of course it's not giving a very positive outlook. I have to say the word with the capital C, Corona, is here to stay.
All right, Conrad, we'll see how that goes. Thank you. We'll see you again tomorrow. Of course, we're still tracking the markets, but this time in the UK, where the sterling was up 0.2% earlier against a slightly stronger dollar ahead of the unemployment and GDP data this week. Well, let's see if anything has changed at the market. And Juliana Olayinka joins us now to tell us from our London studio. Good afternoon, Juliana. The FTSE started off in the green this morning. How much of that has changed at intraday, and what are the immediate drivers?
Good afternoon, Busy. Not much changed at intraday. It started off on a strong start this morning, and at intraday, it's still very strong. The FTSE All-Share is up 0.28%. The FTSE 100 is up 0.25%, and the FTSE 250 is up by more than 0.5%. In currencies, the pound is just down on the US dollar by 0.01%, up on the euro by 0.19%, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.04%. On the domestic market, the FTSE 250, Cineworld, which is a big British cinema company, their shares have surged by about 14% after this new news about US film studios not being able to buy cinemas. That's been overruled, and so investors seem to be wanting to plant their money there. Cinemas not yet open in the UK. Their lockdown was still restricted, but as soon as they are open, we're expecting to see some changes in the Cineworld industry. And also on the FTSE 100, British Airways owner IAG, they saw their shares rise by about 4.5% this morning. Even though the second wave is on the move, traders still pretty confident in IAG.
All right, Juliana, let's talk about the insurance group Royal London, which has paid out £8.5 million in life insurance claims to the families of more than 1,200 customers whose deaths were attributed to COVID-19, and is also setting aside £10 million for future claims. What will this payout mean for the insurer?
Well, the insurance industry has changed, particularly during COVID, but how perhaps people are going to be taking back, or families of the deceased will be taking their life insurance. Of course, during the pandemic, there have been an increase in excess deaths. There have been so many statistics that economists and data professionals have been trying to worm their way through over the past few weeks, and we won't really know the scale of devastation that COVID-19 has caused in the UK for months and months and months. But, Royal Insurer, as well as many other big insurance companies in the UK, have had to put out some money aside. There's the £8.5 million by Royal Insurer. Also, Aviva, they've actually paid £36 million out. And Legal & General, L&G, that's another popular insurance company. They've also paid out £36 million to families of the deceased. And now not all of these families died because of COVID. Some of these families died with COVID. Some of these families died because they couldn't get to the hospitals or were afraid of going to the hospitals. So it's had that second impact illness. Barry O'Dwyer, he is one of the chief executive officers. He is the chief executive officer at Royal Insurer. He said in a statement that new business sales for protection products grew by 15% during the pandemic, reminding customers of the importance of life insurance, critical illness and income protection. Pension sales were lower as a consequence of the disruption to advisors' ability to do business during lockdown. So insurance companies have sometimes come across as being a guilty member when it comes to the pandemic. There have been so many businesses that have felt they could have been paid out but didn't pay out because, of course, COVID-19 wasn't written in the small print. But when it comes to life insurance and life protection, if you die, you die. And, we know that, especially in this country, almost 50,000 people have died from COVID-19 related illnesses, and the insurance companies have had to pay out to those loved ones.
Now, UK fashion chain Superdry has shored up its finances with a new £70 million lending facility from its banks to see it through the COVID-19 crisis. Tell us more about this.
Well, Superdry, it used to be a popular brand. It's a clothing, kind of a high street, high-end clothing brand that is dominated with Japanese literature on their clothes. Well, they were struggling like many other high street brands before COVID. I believe their shares today are down 90% on what they were 2 years ago. And since the pandemic, their shares have dropped by 60%. Now, they've just released their 6 months year to June results, and their results are down 24% for the 3 months. Now, they've said that this is much better than what they were expecting, so a quarter of a drop in revenue is still not as bad as what they feared, and they've managed to turn it around because they've sought financial support from HSBC and another large bank of £70 million. So this will hopefully keep them afloat for another 3 years, I believe. And as soon as they made that announcement, their shares were up 20%, but still discounting that 90% I mentioned earlier and that 60%. Now, they furloughed 88% of their staff. They kept a very skeleton team working within their warehouses. And the co-founder, Julia Duncan, has said that this new loans gives them flexibility to execute their current plans. Now, they've secured this funding. However, I've got to say a lot of observers are wondering whether or not that niche style of clothing that they distribute to customers is fetchy enough. Is this really the future of fashion? But again, they're having the same debate, and they're being critiqued as well as many other high street brands. And they're just finding the competitiveness of the high street just too much to burden. But for Superdry, who are on the FTSE 250, they've been given an extra couple of years of life. So I'm sure their employers are very, very happy this afternoon.
I can only imagine. Thank you, Juliana. The markets in Asia traded mostly higher on Monday, but investors remain cautious over heightened US-China tensions in recent weeks. South Korea's Kospi index gained 1.48% to 2,386.38 as shares of automakers surged. In Australia, the benchmark ASX 200 rose 1.76% to 6,110.2, with all sectors finishing higher. China's mainland markets reversed earlier losses to advance, and the Shanghai Composite rose 0.75%. The Shenzhen Component Index was fractionally higher at 13,657.31, and the Shenzhen Composite was up 0.2% at 2,277.4. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index retraced earlier losses of more than 1% to trade down 0.6%, meanwhile markets in Japan are closed on Monday for a public holiday. And in the U.S., stock futures were mixed early Monday morning after President Donald Trump signed several executive orders aimed at extending coronavirus relief. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures indicated a gain of about 66 points at the open. The S&P futures also pointed to the opening gains, while the Nasdaq 100 futures were marginally lower. Let's talk about oil prices now. They are actually higher today thanks to Saudi optimism on Asian demand and an Iraqi pledge to deepen supply cuts, although uncertainty over a deal to shore up the U.S. economic recovery capped gains. Brent crude futures were up more than 1% at $44.92 a barrel, while U.S. WTI crude futures also rose 1.6% to $41.88 a barrel, also in early trade. Now, Saudi Arabian Aramco's chief executive, Amin Nasser, said on Sunday that he sees oil demand rebounding in Asia as economies gradually open up after the easing of coronavirus lockdowns. Still to come on the program, a look at how CFA franc member countries' economies have managed during the COVID-19 pandemic. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's talk about the latest developments regarding the proposed echo currency for Francophone West African markets. Of course, there was a lot of attention given to the proposals for the new currency, but little progress has been made since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. A senior analyst for Sub-Saharan Africa at Docker Frontier London, Matt Kinniger, joins us now to look at how the CFA franc member countries' economies have managed during the pandemic and what the outlook for the implementation of the currency is. Good afternoon, Matt. Thanks for joining us on the program. Let's begin the conversation with you telling us how CFA franc membership affected the performance of countries that use a single currency in West and Central Africa.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show. I would say that there hasn't been a single sub-Saharan African economy that has been unaffected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Every country has seen growth fall. And this includes some of the members of the CFA franc, notably Cameroon. We are expecting the economy to fall quite deeply into recession this year, which will be its worst performance since 1993. But there have been a couple of outliers across sub-Saharan Africa. A good example is Côte d'Ivoire, which continues to grow. Its economy will continue to grow this year, and this is because of resilient consumer spending and fairly upbeat public investment ahead of the election in a couple of months' time. Our view at Docker Frontier is that both Cameroon and Côte d'Ivoire, on balance, have probably marginally benefited from membership of the CFA franc during this crisis. And this is because they have not been exposed to pressures on their currencies, which hasn't resulted in a depreciation. And it also has meant that inflation has remained quite low. So this has supported consumer spending and also had a positive effect on investor sentiment.
What sound bites are you getting regarding when the CFA franc would likely be replaced by the ECHO, and how will the ECHO's introduction affect the day-to-day operations of businesses in the region?
Yeah, so this is a big question. A lot of our clients are asking us about when the ECHO is going to be introduced and what it will mean for them day to day. So it was meant to be at some point in 2020, but since the pandemic began, things have gone very quiet. We probably are looking at 2021 or maybe 2022, and this is because France, which is currently a major partner in the running of the CFA franc, is preoccupied with the pandemic itself, but also other West African countries are also focused on containing the impact of the pandemic on their economies. So it probably won't be for at least another year or so. In terms of what it means for business, actually, it won't mean a huge amount of difference or change. And this is because the eco currency is likely to be replaced at parity to the CFA franc, which means it will be pegged to the euro. And it probably will be managed in a very similar way, although the French authorities will no longer have as much say in the way it's managed. But day-to-day, not very much change for business.
All right, just before I let you go, Matt, I'd like to ask you, how likely do you think countries like Nigeria and Ghana will join the ECHO currency in the future?
So this is a big question that's also been posed by many analysts. Ghana and Nigeria have expressed some interest in joining the ECHO in the future, but membership by Ghana and Nigeria is unlikely for the foreseeable future in our view, and this is for a couple of reasons. Ghana has a very different exchange rate regime from most other West African nations, and that is because the cedi is very flexible, and this allows it to, the value of the cedi is flexible, and this allows Ghana to respond to external shocks that we've seen recently. And in Nigeria's case, it's a different issue. So Nigeria's economy dwarfs that of other economies in the CFA franc, and the Côte d'Ivoire, which is currently the largest member of the CFA franc. And our view is that countries like Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal may feel a bit uncomfortable conceding monetary policy sovereignty to a much bigger neighbor, Nigeria, because Nigeria, obviously, if it were to join a single currency, would want to lead monetary policy for the new currency. So this would be a sticking point that would take a very long time to resolve.
Thank you, Senior Analyst for Sub-Saharan Africa at Docker Frontier London, Matt Kinniger, for speaking with us on the program.
Thanks.
In other news now, Egypt's annual urban consumer price inflation fell to 4.2% in July from 5.6% in June. Now, data from Central Statistics Agency CAPMAS on a month-on-month basis shows that inflation increased to 0.4% in July from 0.1% in June. Now, the World Bank has approved a $150 million International Development Association credit to improve tenant security and access to basic services for 1.7 million residents living in Kenya's urban informal settlements. The second phase of the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project will improve access to basic services such as clean water and safe water, mobility within the informal settlements, access for emergency vehicles, and the resilience of communities in instances of disasters. In addition, it will increase the connectivity of residents to socio-economic opportunities, while the high mast lights will enhance economic activities by reducing crime. Meanwhile, the World Bank has approved a $114.28 million grant to Nigeria in efforts aimed at reducing the effects of COVID-19 on the country's economy. In a recent statement, the bank's board of directors mentions that the financing package comprises $100 million credits from the International Development Association and $14.28 million from the Pandemic Emergency Financing Facility. The World Bank further explains that the federal government would provide grants to the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory through the COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Project to curb local transmission and limit the spread of the coronavirus. The Republic Bank Ghana Limited is advocating for the issuance of a green bond in Ghana to raise long-term financing for green building construction by developers and green mortgage financing. The bank's General Manager for Risk Management, Mr. Bernard Gierby, told the virtual Ghana Green Building Summit that this has become necessary as one of the lasting effects of the COVID-19 pandemic will be the new normal of physical and social distancing, which means more people will be seeking accommodation. According to him, green mortgage loan products, which will enable members of the public to access affordable mortgage facilities that are subsidized by the government to buy properties that are approved as environmentally friendly, utilize clean energy, and nurture the green environment. And that's where we wrap up today's program. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.